MOUs, the beloved MOU. An MOU justifies a press release, particularly when it's an MOU, a meaningless piece of paper, an MOU with a government. Because as we all know, an MOU commits a government in paper, on writing, cast iron, forces a government to commit itself to talking. That's it. That's all it is.
Now, you, Rod, know how to actually do strategic partnerships, not bullshit, but strategic partnerships. So, how do you do that in a developing economy? What give us a success story of going into a jurisdiction, navigating the waters, the rules, the cultural standards, and actually being able to create the strategic partnership with a government or with a corporation within that, and to actually have these, something that yielded great results, which I'm sure you have many stories like this.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to echo what you've said about partnerships, or essentially so-called partnerships, being thrown around like rice in the crypto industry. Yes, that's true, but I don't think that's a crypto thing. I think that is an emerging market thing. But the reason why it's so typical in crypto, though, is because crypto has this thing. It's a chicken and egg argument, really, of there being tribal communities. Now, perhaps these tribal communities develop because people coalesce around project X or Y, coin X or Y. They're invested, so their view is coin X or Y to the moon, and they're just on it every day. They wake up in the morning. What's happening in this community where I'm going to get rich? There's all of that stuff. Or conversely, it's the project that attracts people, and people think this is great. Now, sorting out the wheat from the chaff, which projects people have speculatively thrown some money at, and which ones have very diligently been in stealth mode, have become public, and people think, wow, this is great. They already know where they're going in terms of plans for global adoption, partnerships they're going to use in order to capitalize on that, riding on the coattails of large mainstream corporates. They're really, it's hard to say, but there is this thing of having communities. And what that leads to is, in my view, an unhealthy focus on preaching to the converted. These people who've already invested in coin X or coin Y or project X or project Y, of course they need to be updated, as any investor in any business needs to be updated. The conventional way is quarterly financial returns and reports and updates and so on. But no, in an era and with a generation that is used to instant communication, they want stuff every day. They want stuff on Twitter every 5 minutes. What quarterly report? What printed and written to read? It's absolutely anathema to them. And so there is a monster that needs feeding. Those are the crypto communities. And so one of the things that leads to are good news stories. We've signed an MOU here, we've signed an MOU, you've signed an MOU. Everywhere, so-called partnerships are being thrown around, as you say, like rice. Even outside of the crypto community, the same thing happens to a degree. But the things that are thrown around like rice are MOUs, the beloved MOU. An MOU justifies a press release, particularly when it's an MOU, a meaningless piece of paper, an MOU with a government. Because as we all know, an MOU commits a government in paper, on writing, cast iron, forces a government to commit itself to talking. That's it. That's all it is. We'll talk about, maybe whether we can explore this. We probably can't, but let's tell the world that we're prepared to talk to each other. That's all it is, but it justifies government announcement. It justifies press release. So it's not just crypto, but it takes different expression outside of the crypto industry. Now, in terms of the way the way to go about developing partnerships, either commercial or government, as I said earlier, the thing to do is to recognise, and I say this with a small e, not a capital E, exploit or take advantage of or use the strategic and political desires of that potential partner, whether they're corporate or government. So, for example, in Georgia as a country was absolutely determined and has already done a really, really good job, determined to attain as high a position as possible on the World Bank's ease of doing business index. Most people don't know that it's right up there. I think when we were there, it had gotten, I did my research, it had gotten up to 6th. It didn't want to be 6th or 5th, it wanted to be first. And, that's where it was heading, what it wanted to do. And so partnerships, associations with organizations from leading economies in the US, the UK, wherever, absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. There are also opportunities, similar opportunities in countries in the Middle East. Hedge funds, or Abu Dhabi is not a city. It is a black hole, specifically for the world's hedge funds. They are just being sucked in because of the environment there, the business environment there, the capital available there, and the desire of the country. I have in the region, I've watched the leader of Saudi explaining the country's ambitions to be ultimately in the G7. I don't believe him, and I don't believe him because what he's saying is not true. He and the government of that country do not want Saudi Arabia to be in the G7. They want Saudi Arabia to be in a club called the G1. And I am telling you, they are going to get there. They do not have ambitions to be in the G7. They have ambitions to be in the G1. And considering all of those things is what leads you to come up with the strategies that will be successful, really. In terms of an example of things that I've worked on, probably the best one is one I've already mentioned. I mean, I could mention some work we did with UK companies when I was in the UK government, who were attempting to export next generation smart city technologies to Malaysia and Singapore. We organised an overseas trade mission to Malaysia and Singapore. One of the technologies that was developed that I particularly liked, and the ex-journalist in me, amongst all the companies, the ex-journalist in me looks at this and just says, that is a story. They developed pavements that harness the kinetic energy to power cities. I just looked at it and thought, that is a story. And that is the kind of story that has journalists in newsrooms just throwing stuff away and just saying, that's a story, and wanting to grab a piece of it. No, we're going to do that as a feature. No, it's news. That's a story. But not that. And, we had another international trade mission to the US. Would have been around 2018, I think. Around space and satellite technology. There's incredible space and satellite technology, infrastructure and industry in the UK, and we were attempting to forge partnerships there. But probably the best one is the one I mentioned before, and it was our own startup. And one of the things, we had a dual strategy. We went into partnership with sport governing bodies, and maybe, between certainly less than 10%, probably close to 5% of our overall throughput was the software that we supplied to them. That was win-win for us, because the fact that the sport governing bodies were utilising this software provided absolute legitimacy for us as a company and for our product as a brand. Absolutely great. Around 5% of our software throughput. The rest of it was via sales directly into educational institutions, and we used our partner EdExcel for that. They're a huge marketing muscle. Probably the best thing was the discovery of the fact that in the ASEAN region, one of the legacies of colonialism, in places like Malaysia and Singapore and other countries, they still have what are called international A-levels, which are, a baccalaureate style qualification for people between 16 and 18 immediately before going to university. And we developed partnerships with those countries specifically around mainstreaming and formally recognising the software and associated qualification that we developed around it. And I've not done a great deal of international work before then, but that's the thing that really stuck with me and that really drove this understanding of my part. Because before I went there, I knew what I was walking into. I've been working on the product with sales partners in the UK for many years, so I knew exactly what it was going to be like. I knew my script, I knew how to sell it in. Everything I did was wrong. And that was the first time that I realised that what I'm doing is correct in country X. In country Y, I got absolutely no clue. And so I had to lean on the expertise of EdExcel's local people to handle all of that stuff, really. And that stuck with me, ever since. Know what you know, but try and understand what you don't know, really. So that's the one that's most significant for me, because that's informed everything I've done since in terms of my attitude in international relations.